so far tonight, but we are recording anyway. So, we've been going through a study of Colossians, chapter 1, and there's a quick review in here. Of course, we know that the author of this book was Paul the Apostle, and of course, there is no city of Galatia, that's a region, but there was a city of Colossae. It was on the crossroads that were major trading routes at one time, but like we explained before, when the interstates went through the distances on like Route 66 or White Horse Pike or whatever, well, they kind of died out. Well, same thing. Colossae was a pretty small town by the time Paul was writing, and we can take, as a small church, there's some smaller churches, take comfort in that. Because Paul thought they were important enough to write about, or write to, rather. And so he was writing this while he was under house arrest in Rome, sometime between the year of our Lord 60 and 62. So what's going on? Why did he write this? Well, the founding pastor of that church in Colossae was a man named Epaphras. And Epaphras went to visit Paul while he was in prison to encourage him, but also because he was struggling with a group of false teachers. These false teachers had a combination of Judaism. So in order to be saved, in order to be a first-class Christian, you have to become a Jew, follow ceremonial law. Now you have to be circumcised. And if that was not bad enough, well, they also were engaged in, these false teachers, in pagan mysticism. They said, we know something you don't know. And if you want the best of heaven, if you want the best of God, you need to know what we know. And they call their knowledge gnosis. It's the heretics, or the heresy of Gnosticism, Gnostism. We'll talk a little bit, review a little bit, some of the things that these Gnostics believe. So, Paul is writing an answer to these issues, and very often as we look at the book, we see that Paul is using the language of the Gnostics against them. So as we looked through this, we saw that, like many of the epistles, all of the epistles, the believers in Colossae were referred to as saints. And I've explained that you should rightly call me Saint Pete. You all smile, Saint Pete chuckle. Well, it's true. In God's eyes, because of the finished work of Christ, because Christ's righteousness is imputed to me, I was justified when God gave me the faith. When God the Father looks at me, he sees St. Pete, and he expects me to act like a saint. And when he looks at you, he sees St. Debbie, Judy, and so on. And he wants all of us to be acting like what we are. Now we know we often fall short of it, because none of us have dealt with sin. But, guess what? We have the power not to sin. Those outside of Christ have no choice. Even when they're doing good things, they're not doing it in faith, and whatever is not of faith is
sight.
Well, that's true, you're walking by sight. But the Bible says whatever is not of faith is sin. Yes, evil and death goes with it. Sin, or maybe an easier one. Without faith, it is impossible to please Him. Yes. Okay. So, Christians often cringe at being, using that word because, well, one thing, the Roman Catholic Church has used that. Oh, well, people are saints because we've named them saints because they've done 3 miracles, 7 miracles, something. Whatever else is on the list of becoming a saint. No, when we were justified but through faith by grace, we are the saved, completely sin-free. We're employees, we're saints. We then further looked at greeting. We saw that they were extending to each other grace and peace. Remember, grace is God giving us good things that we don't deserve, God's unmerited favor. And that peace is not just the absence of war, but it's also a state of well-being. You're prosperous, you're healthy, intellectually stimulated, you're emotionally stable. All aspects of our life are well. It's part of God's gift of peace. So God's gift of peace goes two ways. First, we have peace with God. You see that before our salvation, we were at enmity with God. That's a fancy way of saying that we were God's enemy. We wanted nothing to do with him. God had to make the first move to bring us to salvation and to draw us. God the Father draws us. God the Father gives us the gift of faith. It's a new grace. And we saw things that Paul was pressed about in their faith, and that he said that he was praying for them, and he had a list of prayer requests that we went over, and I think it's a good list for us today. He said that he was praying that we should be praying for each other, that we would, one, know and do the will of God. Second, that we would be filled with wisdom and spiritual understanding. Third, we would walk in a manner worthy of our Lord. Fourth, we would please him and take pleasure in him. Fifth, be fruitful in good works. Sixth, be strengthened in his power unto joyful patience and long suffering. So we found that in part in verses 9 through 14. And then we started developing, well, what is God's will? How do I know God's will? Well, first of all, the Bible gives us some very specific examples. Thessalonians 4:3. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that you should abstain from fornication. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. We looked at several different examples, and we also saw that God in His Scripture gave us general principles by which we can discern His will. For example, many times, how do I know that it's not okay to go across the street to Wawa and steal a pack of gum because I want it? Show me in the Bible where it says, thou shalt not take gum from Wawa. Not there, is it? So how do I know that I shouldn't do that? Or is it okay? Oh, thou shalt not steal. Well, that's a general principle. And taking something that doesn't belong to me is stealing. Therefore, it's not okay for me to take a pack of gum from the law. Right? So we went through these various prayer requests, and then we looked at the need to live lives fully pleasing Him. We went over various things that we can do that pleases God. Romans 15:1-3 tells us that we're to live our lives to please others instead of ourselves, because that's pleasing to God. Hebrews 11:5-6 tells us that we have to have faith in order to please God, otherwise we'll never please Him. We saw in Psalm 69, verses 30-31, that praise of God is pleasing to God. We saw that generosity pleases God. Obedience pleases God. Obedience not only to himself, but to those that God places in authority. God takes pleasure in enabling us to please Him and delights and takes delight when we do that. When we do please Him. We can please God by having a relationship with Him. After all, think of creation. Why did God make Adam and Eve in His own image? Well, because He wanted a relationship with them. What happened before Adam and Eve fell into sin? Every day, or every evening, what happened? these things. Then we looked at Paul's Thanksgiving list. So Paul was thankful that we were qualified to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints of light, that we were delivered from the power of darkness, that we were translated into your Son, that we have redemption through his blood, our sins are forgiven. And then we looked at Psalm 68:19, saying that God daily loads us down with benefits. Think of that. He gives us so many benefits that we're struggling to bear the load. Then we went through Psalm 103, and we found 14 different benefits that Jehovah provides. So at least 14 things that we can be thankful for. Go about and worship that. So, we then last week began to talk about our topic tonight, which is the preeminence of Christ. The reason Paul brings this up is because Gnostics were teaching that Christ isn't really sufficient for our need to know God. You actually need to worship angels because they had different spheres of authority and can tell you more of this special knowledge that we need to know who is God. So I give a handout, and it's out there, some basic or dangerous beliefs of Gnosticism. What did they think? What did they believe? Why was Paul railing against this? Well, first of all, they taught, like others religions teach, that humans contain a piece of God. In other words, they have a spark of the divine within them. That's false doctrine. We are created beings, and we have no divinity within us whatsoever. In fact, without Christ, our hearts are desperate to be with him. They teach that these divine sparks have fallen from the immaterial world, heaven, the spiritual world, into the bodies of humans. That's how that happened. Now, every lie of Satan has a kernel of truth, otherwise we wouldn't believe it. Here's the kernel of truth. All physical matter is subject to decay, rotting, and death. Well, that's true. The moment we're born, our bodies are starting to wear out. The older we get, the more they wear out. Don't brush your teeth. Some of your teeth are subject to decay. So the material world, here's where they go off the rails. They say the material world is essentially evil. The highest good is get rid of the physical, get rid of the material, be spiritual. They make it sound very spiritual. They make it sound this is really something we should try for. So the chief goal is to obtain the highest knowledge, or the highest gnosis. Now, some Gnostics, the Gnostics were divided as to what they taught about Jesus. Some think that Jesus was the embodiment of the supreme being, the embodiment of God, who came incarnate to bring gnosis to earth. And they would probably be among those Gnostics who taught that Jesus never really died. Now, whereas if Jesus never died, we're still in our sins. Without the shedding blood of his provisions. So, obvious heresy, obvious road to hell. Other Gnostics would adamantly deny Jesus did not have a physical body in the sin. Because the material world is evil. How could, if Jesus was God, how could God who is good have a physical body which is evil? They would say. So Jesus was merely a human who reached a pretty high level of gnosis, a pretty high level of knowledge, and he taught his disciples. So, the last of their dangerous beliefs are, I mentioned, angels are to be worshipped and consulted to achieve salvation. That is, to be freed from material existence. celestial beings who control certain spheres through which the soul was to pass to shed its physicality. So when Paul mentions dominions and principalities and thrones and so on, he's throwing their own language back at them. Yes, did these divisions of angels exist? Yeah, that's a kernel of truth. Are we supposed to worship them? Are they our means of salvation? So, very dangerous belief. So, we then started looking at Colossians 15, 1, 15, 20. So, if you would turn in your Bibles to there, Colossians 1, 15, 20. And we read, who here's referring to Jesus, who is the image of the invisible God, or God the Father, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he's before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. That's our theme, preeminence of Christ. For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, by Jesus, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven, the physical world or the spiritual world. But one thing I did not put on that little handout was the ascetics also believed in, the Gnostics also believed in asceticism. Deny your body any pleasure because remember material world. So, first of all, we saw that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. How do we know anything about God the Father? Well, because Jesus revealed to us. Remember, Jesus said, whatever the Father tells me, I tell you. Whatever the Father tells me to do, that's what I do. Jesus, although equal as God the Son to God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, willingly obeyed the Father. How do we know he did that? Well, remember, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was face to face with not just the physical being of the cross, that was bad enough, but with the knowledge that what's going to also happen on that cross. God the Father was going to turn his back on God the Son. He was going to forsake him. All of God's wrath was going to be poured into Christ. Jesus knew that was coming. That was the physical part, which was horrible. It's nothing compared to Jesus taking all the wrath of God and returning. So that's what you're So, he took all that so that he could manifest the Father. And he showed his obedience. In order for Jesus to qualify to be our Savior, he had to live a sinless life. He had to obey the Father's will. And what did Jesus say? Father, if there's any other way that we can do this, then let's do it. Father, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine. I don't want to do this, Father. I know what it's going to cost me. But this is the only way to save our creation, our humanity, our humans, our creatures, the ones we love. I'll do it. So he did. So he revealed the Father to us. And we saw that he is fully God in every way. We then looked at he's the firstborn of every creature. That doesn't mean that God the Father in eternity past created God the Son. He's the only begotten Son. I explained all of what that means. We know that God, because God's Word tells us so, we know that the three persons of the Trinity have always existed. can something always be? That's not within our realm of understanding. For us, something always has a beginning and an end. God has no beginning and no end. He transcends time because he created time. But he's the firstborn of every creature. What does that mean? It means that, remember, in ancient times, the firstborn son got, when the father of the firstborn son died, what happened? He got everything, right? Why was it a big deal that Esau gave his birthright to Jacob? Because he lost all the flocks, all the tents, all the land, all the king. Jacob. So, Jesus being the firstborn of every creature means that he has priority over everything and everyone. So this morning we were talking about the fact that God is El Elyon, the highest one. He has preeminence over us. He's our provider. He's our protector. Provider. That's a provider. He's our provider. So, firstborn has the preeminence. Jesus was begotten, not created. And he was prior to all creation because we know that he's the creator. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God, Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Similar language in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And what does it go on to say? All things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. And was continue going on. Who is the him? It's Jesus. So Jesus was the instrument of the triune God that made all things. Jesus is the Word. How were all things made? God spoke everything into existence. He used words. So, he's the creator by, now angels, right now, are they more powerful, more intelligent, more everything than us? Yes. Are they more powerful than God? Obviously not. How can something that's being created be more powerful than God? Lucifer had thought about that. He would have perhaps fallen into sin. Lucifer, in his pride, said, no, I'm equal to my creator. It's kind of ludicrous. That's what he did. Of course, our fall eventually was the result. So the Gnostics say, oh no, Jesus didn't make all things, he was created. He's part of creation. So Paul is saying, if Christ is the first created being, then he can't be the creator. It's one or the other. Paul's telling us that Christ made all the creatures, both visible and invisible, and therefore he can have legs to them all. It's the first one. Then we also saw that he's firstborn from the dead. Now remember, he raised other people from the dead. Elijah raised someone from the dead. Elisha, I think, raised someone from the dead. There were other cases of being raised from the dead. So then how is Jesus the firstborn from the dead? Because when Lazarus was raised from the dead, can we go talk to Lazarus today? No. Why? He's dead. He died. Ones that were resurrected from the dead prior to Jesus' resurrection and after Jesus' resurrection. Yeah, there were some. They have to die again. Is Jesus ever going to die again? No, he died for our sins. There is no reason for him to die again. So, we then saw that not only did Christ make all things, he sustains all things. Jesus didn't want your car to exist anymore, he was the car was gone. Jesus is not only creator, he's a sustainer of all things. He's been appointed heir of all things. By whom he made, so the Father gave all things to his Son, and it was by his Son that the Father made the worlds. So, Jesus is actively maintaining the existence of creation, this physical world that the Gnostics say is evil. It would be better if it didn't exist. If that was true, why would Jesus sustain this? Fourthly, Jesus is the head of the church. Just like our brains control our bodies, Jesus controls every part of the church. He gives it life and direction. Ephesians 4:15 and 16. But speaking the truth in love, and grow up in Him in all things, which is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body fitly joined together and being acted by that which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working of the measure of every part, making the increase of the body, yet finding itself in love. We all want to be the head. We all want to have control. We have to submit to Jesus. We also saw that in Him all fullness dwells. What's that mean? Well, fullness is a theological term that means that everything that makes God God is in Jesus. All the attributes of divinity are within Jesus. All the powers that God has, Jesus has. Whereas the Gnostics thought, oh no, well, these powers are divided. Some belong to the invisible thrones, some belong to the dominion, some to the principalities, some to the powers. And, of course, who are these beings, these divisions? Well, they're demons. They're Satan and his demons. So, Satan's the head. Satan has all sorts of power. Not as much power as God, of course. It's counterfeit power. And it's operating subject to the limits that God has. We know that from the book of Job. Oh, Job will never listen to you if you just let me take away his wealth. Okay, go ahead. You can do it. Jesus didn't curse him. Job didn't curse God, did he? Oh, well, you kill his children. You let me kill his children, you see what happens, God. Okay, go ahead. Everything that happened to Job was because God permitted it. Which means everything that happens to us is because God permitted it. We just have to trust it. What God says in His Word, that everything that happens is going to work out for our good if we love God and all of His purpose. It pleased God the Father to hurt the Son, punish the Son. Did God really take pleasure in that? Well, I don't think so. But it was part of His will. It was part of His plan to restore us. It was necessary. Just like in Isaiah 53, it pleased the Lord to bruise Him. By His stripes we are healed. So all the fullness, there's no division. Christ is all in all. Christ is preeminent. And that fullness dwells in Him permanently. That is all that God is in Jesus. If you want to have more of God, you have to have more of Jesus. So that brings us to our next section, Colossians 1:21-23. In new. And you that were sometimes alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, Colossians 1:21. Yet now hath He reconciled the body of His flesh through death, presenting holy and unblameable and unreprovable in His sight. If you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which ye have heard and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. So the Father, what's Paul saying? Well, he's saying the Father has restored man to a right relationship with Him through the blood of His Son. We who were alienated from God. Well, we hear lots about illegal aliens. Does that mean creatures from space who have crossed our borders illegally? Is that what that is? Now, what's an alien? It's not E.T. Alien is someone who is not part of the country, is not a citizen of the country. I'm a citizen of the United States. If I go to France, I'm an alien. Some people consider me an alien here. That's one altogether. We would be aliens in France. Sally Clark can be in the United States and France and be an alien in neither, which is a French citizen as well. For most of us, if we're in another country, we're an alien. So, alien, we don't belong. So if we're alienated from God, we don't want to be with Him. It's Him. God is mine, and I belong to Him. He is, of course, He is mine. I am His, and He is mine. Thank you. Why? How can that be? Well, because we're no longer aliens. We're no longer non-citizens of heaven. We are citizens of heaven. So we were alienated from God. We were the enemies of God in our minds. And the only way that we couldn't go to God and say, hey, let's sign a peace treaty. Let's negotiate here. God. Our minds were darkened. We want nothing to do with God. God had to take the first step, make the first move. And He did. So Paul's saying, God made the first move. He reconciled us by the blood of His Son. His body was broken for us. In other words, we were rebellious both in mind and body towards God. We were God's enemies, and that was reversed because God took action. Jesus suffered, bled, and died for us. So that reconciliation brings us back full circle to where we began this evening, because Paul calls us saints. Right, Saint Debbie? Yeah. We are saints because we are citizens of heaven. This world is not my home. I'm just a passenger. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. We're supposed to consider ourselves to be citizens of heaven. We are saints. We are His holy ones. The passage we read says that God the Father did this so that in His eyes we are holy, unblameable, and unreprovable. Holy, unblameable, and unreprovable. Holy. Holy means set apart. Sanctified. All the same thing. Separated from sin and set apart to God. To God, not from God. We went from being separated from God and united to sin to separated from sin and united to God. Set apart. We're in a big group. God takes me and puts me over here and says, He's one of the holy ones. He goes here. He's not over there with the unholy ones. Hard to believe. But true. Because we've been reconciled to God. We're separated from sin, set apart to God. Unblameable. That means blameless, without blemish or spot. Now, you all know me. Am I really blameless? Am I without spot? I think I am. That would be blamable right there, wouldn't it? But remember, that's my position in Christ. If I've sinned some way and Satan sees me, he goes up to heaven and says, hey God, did you see that Keith over there? Did you see what he did? What are you going to do about that? You say, what are you talking about? I see one that's covered by the blood of Christ. I don't remember his sins against him anymore. I've separated them as far as the east is from the west. Buried in the depths of the deepest sea. Get out. Get away from me, Satan. You can't blame Keith. unreprovable. Again, no one, not even Satan, can charge us with sin. Because God would say, God, the Holy Judge, would say, sorry, case dismissed, the charges have been dropped. That sin was already punished and paid for. Nice try, Satan. Get out. So, we have Christ's righteousness imputed to us. Because of this, in 2 Corinthians 5, verses 15 to 20, we want to take the time to read all that, but if you want to, turn back to that. I'll summarize it. Paul tells us that the Father, through Christ, has given us a ministry of reconciliation. God reconciled us to himself. Now he wants us to reconcile others to himself. Telling others what God has done for them. So he's reconciled us to him. We have to be reconciled to God. How do we do that? Well, we do that by accepting the finished work of Christ for ourselves. Verse 15 of that passage, 2 Corinthians 5:15, says, quote, we must not henceforth live unto ourselves, I'm adding that word, but unto him which died for them and rose again. So if we've accepted by faith Christ, we need to be acting in a certain way. It's like as we were learning about King Saul. Saul was, God promised Saul, I'll empower you to be a good king. I'll make you, your sons, your grandsons, your great-grandsons, they'll all be kings too. If you do what? If you obey me. What happened this time is he never was. Him. John. So we are empowered by God to stop living for ourselves and instead living for Christ, pointing others to reconciliation. We can continue in faith because we are in reality new creatures. Our faith must be enduring and persevering. That's one of the points of Calvinism. We can't lose our salvation. We're truly saved. We can't lose it. Saving faith is persevering faith. Philippians 1:6, being confident of this thing that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it unto the day of Jesus Christ. Unto the day of Jesus Christ. That's when Jesus comes back to judge the earth, judge sinners. So if God started a work in us and he's going to do it until judgment, that means if we're truly saved, we can't become unsaved. Philippians 2:11 through 13. And that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of the Father. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do his good pleasure. That verse used to trouble me quite a bit. I have to work out my own salvation with fear and trembling? How in the world could I possibly do that? I can't do that. I can do the fear and trembling part. I'm a sinner. I know what God does to sinners. That scares me. But work out my own salvation? There's something wrong there because elsewhere we're told that by grace, by unmerited favor, are we saved through faith, not of works, not of ourselves, lest any man should boast. If I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps, yeah, I'm going to heaven. I didn't. No, nothing to do other than receiving what God has already done for me. So, what does that mean? To work out our salvation? What's Paul telling us? Well, we are to work to bring it to completion. In other words, we have the responsibility to actively pursue obedience. We have to pursue obedience. Rick's teaching the prayer meeting that we are to not just be hearers of the word, salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God which worketh in you to will and to do his good pleasure. How am I able to actively obey? How am I able to please God and want to please God? Because it says here, God is working in me at this moment to help me will to do that. Taking my will, which would rather be goofing off, and he's saying, all right, remember, your job is to do good works. That's what I say to you. James says, you have faith? Well, show it to me. How can you do that? Works. Can't earn my salvation, but I can show it by what I do, what I say, what I think. But I can't do that on my own. God the Father is working in me to will, to want to do his good. Still don't quite get how fear and trembling goes with that. Except we need to have a healthy awe of God and a fear of the one who can destroy us. Choose not to do what he says. So we'll stop there. Thought I was going to finish tonight. Rick David, of course, is the third place. Job of singing, and come back next week and do the same. Great. There you can. Several houses, but it's great to see you all. I was actually starting to get cold up there. Set apart. Holy. The challenge is live like it. And I have to give other people turns too, you know. Because I saw on Facebook, you were all three together. I'm like, yeah, you're. Don't look at Facebook. So where are you off to next?
She's, with the, when you go in the main entrance, now, the bar's on the right, but when you go in the Hall of Flags where all the pictures are, Charity's office is next to it. See if I can.
Oh, wow. You're being good business.
That founded Blue Cake.
Oh, wow. Good luck.
It's a beautiful.
Well, I guess the Cape May won't be so hot.
Big stairway. That valley goes downstairs.
Not a power pole saw, but a Keith power pole saw. Good for you. Change of clothes from Hannah to Barbara. Your aunt was loved your nieces to pieces. I hate such nieces to pieces. Good for you guys. It's very good. Is she not able?
That's what was in Saturday.
Well, I know what. All three of you can move back to Collingswood. It's only an hour and a half to Cape May. Come back here and start helping us build this place back up. Help with that place. You can take care of your aunt at the same time.
Mom didn't go
Keep praying when it gets over. We haven't started yet, but we are going to start.
But even that is something there. Couldn't get to
Frank, do you know anything?
fixing the grass and your hose, copper, brass, it starts oxidating when you can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why sometimes they need water.
Well, I wasn't trying to, actually, I think I could get that off, but I couldn't, but when I started, when I couldn't turn the thing, I started, well, let's take that, oops.
Yeah, it's
But
counts.
I didn't want to force it.
Well, it's not a good spot. It's gonna be raining for a while. That's why I'm worried.
You're still in Texas, too? No, you're in Kansas. There's the lady in green. Really? Yeah, I guess Kansas would. You would see something like that, I would think. No?
Was talking to my brother, on the way over here, and that burnt heat. He said first, it was like there was a bullseye right on the top of this house, and now they shifted to the left. Supposed to hit about like the bumper.
Originally, it was going to go straight into, like, Cancun, right?
Mexico. They were hoping it would go that way, but,
Eastern Mexico, other than, Cancun's considered not, but most of Eastern Mexico is pretty empty. Good place for it to go.
closed everything, and he batten down the hatches, and they have their generators ready. East Houston,
Do
southwest of
you
Houston.
want to go over that, or just read the instructions and try it out? As far as getting us on the internet, chances are you're gonna, I just text, after trying it a couple times, I just text Steve help, and he sends back me. I don't know where we ever got on tonight or not.
And he was in Southerton, every Sunday evening they have music in the park,
Okay,
and
yes.
so he works on that for them. And that, some ice cream company does the thing, and so they call it Sundays, spelled S-U-N